Hey everyone, and welcome to an Energetic Arts Q&A training session. Uh, Today, we're going to talk a little bit about questions and how to construct good questions and why we should be constructing good questions. But before I do that, and while I'm doing my little disclaimer as I have to, just to cover the bases, can you just check in on the chat feed to let me know that everything's working fine, the sound and audio is coming through, got a good internet connection and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I'm not a teacher, I'm not a healer, I'm not a guru, I'm an artist, I'm a student, I'm someone just like you who's going through all this process of working it all out and exploring all these different dimensions. And we've created this training space so that we can, uh, as a group, come together and tinker and refine our art form and start to ground all these experiences that we've been having. Because as you can already see, hey, how you going, man? Good to have you back. How was your travels? How was your trip to another place in time and space? Um, so yeah, we're coming together. We're tinkering with all these ideas because, as a collective, I think consciousness is starting to the door to conscious awareness is starting to kick open now, and people are becoming really interested in exploring these inner dimensions and seeing how they affect their external reality. And yeah, I bet it was amazing. And and these mystical experiences, what they're being termed, or these supernatural states, um, it's not so much about can we access them, because we are, but sometimes we're not accessing them purposefully or intentionally, and sometimes they just sort of hit us off guard or take us for a little trip somewhere and put us back down in our life in a different way, with our energy all reorganized. And then we're having to make sense of that. It's like, what does this all mean now? Now that I've done the hero's journey, now I've come full circle and I've come back to normal life. I've come back to the Shire. What now? And so this is not kind of your beginner's class. This is more of a master class where people collectively getting together and trading ideas and swapping information and helping each other level up and anchor these states of mind and being into reality and grounding it. And so while I waffle on for a little bit more, if you have a question there, that I'm sure you have a burning question, at least one from your experience, that you want to look at. And I'm not professing to have all the answers, by the way, but what I really want to do in this session is look at some methods on how to approach answering questions that perhaps we don't know where to turn to, or how to construct questions to make sense of the experiences that we've already had. And so um, I once heard this expression that life is an amazing teacher because it gives you the answer first, or the experience first, and then the lesson later, or the question later. So it's a bit like that scene in The Matrix where Neo goes to see the Oracle, and he says, what am I supposed to do? What's the decision that I have to make? And she says, you've already made the decision. Now you have to understand it. And so these sessions, these Q&A sessions, are more about that from that perspective, than, from the beginner going, how many times should I meditate, and how long should I meditate for, and what meditation should I use. Um, if we're talking in context of meditation, I'm assuming that if you've arrived here, that you've already been meditating a while, you know what you like, you know what works for you, you know how long you can meditate for, how often you can meditate for. And if anything, you're looking at ways to expand those uptimes, or those states of mind, and looking at ways to tweak and maybe get a little bit more in line or more out of your experience. So, and like I said, if you have a question there, just pop it in the chat feed and we'll get to it. But I once heard that the answers are in the questions and the questions are in the answers. So sometimes, we're presented with a question that needs an answer, but often the opposite is true, is that we get an experience, or we get an answer come to us, or we get a bit of information comes to us, and then we're like, what the fuck does this mean? What the hell just happened? Who am I now that I've had this experience? What is reality? All these questions come to mind, and these questions are big questions. Sometimes, you go into an altered state, whether it's through meditation or otherwise. I would recommend highly that you practice through meditation and natural acts, that are learning how to use this as it is, rather than use devices. But they can be useful from time to time to so you know what you're looking for. But then once we've had this experience, we get opened up to this huge scape, and it's like, well, now what? How do I make sense of this? How do I ground this experience? How do I embody this? Because if previously, like a minute ago, I thought life was like this, I thought this is who I was, I thought this is where I was going, and now I've had this experience, I've downloaded this information, it's starting to process and become integrated into my being. And now it's like, well, what the hell do I do with all of this? And so, have you experienced this type of thing, or am I just talking? Am I just making stuff up? Would you agree or disagree? I'd like a little bit of feedback here, if that's all right. It would really help me to direct this session. I know it's kind of distracting when you're having to type and listen at the same time, but it does help me. So, to give you a metaphor, just to frame this a little bit better again, if we look at martial arts, and martial arts is a good metaphor, it's one that I've got a bit of understanding about and a bit of experience in. Okay, is that the typical model has been, you go to a class, you typically don't know anything about it except what you've seen in the media, or what you've been told stories, or what you think you know about how to train, and what martial arts is, and why people do it, and all that sort of stuff. And the premise is that you're attacking something outside of yourself, or you're defending from an attack from outside, and there's this separation, and it's about sort of defending your base while attacking the other base, or just plainly spoken. But there's this other way of looking at it where uh, as you get sort of deeper into it and you start to, like what I did is I studied several different styles over a long period of time and sort of looked at the syntax that was common amongst most styles, um, and then you start to formulate your own techniques, your own style from there, because that works for you because of your body type, your conditioning, your conscious awareness, your mental state, where you are in life, where you want to go, all that sort of stuff. So you start to have this sort of convergence, which becomes your particular style. And from there, and a bit like what I'm doing with these Q&As, is that you reach this sort of level of meditative relaxation, I guess, constantly, because you're training the brain and body into particular frequencies, from sitting or kneeling or lying down and being relaxed, to stretching the body and getting it supple and flexible, to strengthening it through, hard training, push-ups, sit-ups, squats, that sort of thing, skipping, hitting the bag, hitting pads, sparring, all that sort of stuff, different exercises. And then, of course, training the mind in to do particular body movements, patterns, going from very simple to more complex, and then taking that all into scenarios where emotionally you're getting heightened all the time and it's becoming more stressful, and seeing if you can maintain your relaxation in those stressful situations. Just like going, you start sparring for the first time, if you've never been in a fight before, can be really like nerve-wracking and emotionally exciting, whether that's a good excitement or not a good excitement. And then you start to get used to that, and then you start training with different partners at different levels, people better than you, not better than you, uh, technically and strength wise, and all that sort of those different factors. And then once you get comfortable there, then you can move, and this is not in any particular order, by the way, then you can move into defending against weapons, knives, sticks, guns, that sort of thing. And then multiple attackers, and then, start training into different sensory deprivation, like being blindfolded or all those sorts of things. And once you go through all that gambit, you sort of reach this place of sort of tranquility and relaxedness, I guess, calmness, where although you still feel all those emotions and they still trigger all these thoughts, you sort of have a lot of tools in your arsenal to be able to deal with all these situations and maintain what I would call a meditative state, where your mind is still open, you're still seeing as many options as you possibly can, and you're not becoming overwhelmed by what appears to be a threat outside of you. And so when we get to this level of training, it's a bit like those old martial arts flicks where the master is sitting there and he's obviously under some kind of threat, but he waits until the attack starts, and then from the attack it creates his response. And we can go a deeper level to that as well, is that a real master will create the attack that he wants to respond to. But that's further down the track. What I want to get at here is this idea that the question, if we formulate the right question, then it's going to create a certain type of movement, state of mind, being, emotionally, energetically in us, that's going to have to cause us to respond and move in a way that perhaps we haven't experienced before, that we weren't aware of before. And so when we're doing this, and this is, because we're always wanting to venture out into this unknown space, we want to do it safely, we want to do it in a way that's enjoyable if we can most of the time. And if it's not enjoyable, then we want to have, you know, skills and abilities and be prepared for whatever might come, and to be able to deal with that. And so this is for the mind, especially questions are good for that. You know, if you look into you know, the Buddhist temples and the Tibetan temples, and you'll often see monks dueling each other intellectually, questioning and poking if they understand the content that they've just learned, and then getting into these debates. And it's an exercise where, you know, you for example, you're a monk, you're a student, you go into this situation, you're reading the doctrines, you're learning the way, and it's going into the mind, and you're creating the neuro pathways, and you're formulating that new mind that's going to use that as material to create its reality. And then you go into this exercise where you're debating with each other, and you're testing whether this neuronet, this belief, this new system of mind is going to hold up under these provocations. And so that you get stress tested. And so these Q&As are good for that, because I get stress tested, obviously, and seeing how I can respond to certain questions. But you formulating the questions and gauging yourself in response to the content that comes through here is gonna you know, it's gonna stress test you a little bit. It's gonna put you off balance. It's gonna integrate and clarify certain things, and it's gonna show you where your mind is at, where your energy's at, and where it's either needs to be reorganized or developed, or it's really good and you want to strengthen and continue going in that direction. So I hope that makes sense. I'm just going to read this question now. So this question is about feelings. Okay, so you've just come back from Burning Man, and you're trying to integrate your experience back home. It's a big jump. And it's not easy, because you're becoming aware of what you want to improve in your life. Yeah, and how can you deal with the negative emotions because of what you've realized of what you need to change in your life? So this is a perfect frame of what I'm talking about, and this is sort of the syntax of why these Q&As are so important, because you're going to have these experiences where you're going to be stretched outside of your mind, outside of your personality, and you're going to, you know, hopefully, well, it works both ways, and we'll look at both ways. In this case, you've probably had this experience where you're on cloud nine, you're ecstatic, you've experienced bliss, you've seen a utopian world where, you know, all these possibilities are there, and you're like, why isn't this normal life? You know, this is so great, and there's thousands of people here. You know, why can't we bring this back into our normal life, and why can't this be the normal baseline reality? And from there, we can step off into all new sorts of things. And, you know, I think that's the process of evolution, really. And just quickly, the opposite's true. You can have a traumatic event that can take you into a really dark place, and, you know, a hellish level. And then when you come back to your normal life, you know, everything's easy. It's like in that movie Fight Club. It's like, you know, after a month in Fight Club, the volume gets turned down on everything. Nothing bothers you anymore. You're not stressed about anything. No, you don't react to things like you used to. And so you've got these it's the same thing but opposite ends of the spectrum. Over here you've got, Fight Club, you're getting the shit kicked out of you, and then when you get nagged from your spouse or your boss, you it's like, whatever. I just got punched in the face yesterday, this is nothing, who cares? And you just deal with it. And over here, where you've got this experience of Burning Man, where you've experienced a potential dimension of human utopia for a week, and then you come back to your baseline reality and like, oh my god, this is crazy, everyone's insane, and why can't we just love each other more and be why do we have to use money, and why is everyone so hung up sexually, and why can't why do we all have to wear the same type of clothes, and why do we have to live in buildings that all look the same? And so you've got this massive spectrum, and in the middle you've got consensus reality, you've got social consciousness. Okay. And so this is good to get contrast, because what I see a lot, before we go further into it, just to really paint the map here, is, and this is what I think is so useful with the spiritual awakening, for lack of a better term, the buzzword, everyone's waking up, is that they're realizing that they've been inside a bubble. And it's like the allegory of the cave. Plato, I think it was Plato, the philosopher about the cave. Everyone's heard of this story before. Another metaphor is like being woken up out of the matrix. It's all the same kind of thing, is where you realize that the consensus social consciousness reality that you've been living in is a conditioned state, and it's not the only way that reality has to be. Okay. But you realize that it's something that everyone has agreed to, whether they're consciously consenting to this or not. But then also on the negative side, if you've experienced utopia and come back here, you look around going, a lot of these people have no idea what they're agreeing to, because they have no idea what else is possible, because they haven't had the experience I've just had. Is that kind of on track? Just let me know in the comments and I'll keep going. And so this is the hero's journey. The hero's journey is that you go through this bit, and it's pretty much the core syntax story of every story that's ever been, where the fool basically on the tarot goes this full journey, comes back the hero, overcoming the dragon and changing everything, and then comes right back to the Shire again, just like the hobbits in Lord of the Rings. They go through this big ordeal, all these trials and tribulations, they come back to the Shire, and it's like, okay, now what? Everything's the same, but it's not the same, because you're not the same. And there was another little metaphor, a little parable that I heard, that sort of, I think, attaches onto the end of this, and I'll reinforce it with some other stuff, is that there's a story of the master that goes, he leaves the monastery after going through all his trials, goes out into the world, and he knows what's possible, and goes back into the world, and sees all the things that could be different, sees all the things that are still causing suffering in people. And at first it's like really heart-wrenching. It's like, why does it have to be like this? It's sad, it's awful, and it's not good. But then something happens, you transcend this good and bad barrier. Okay, because this is part of the consensus reality too, is that things are good or they're bad, and you must choose good over bad, or if you choose bad over good, then you choose a side. But what's more in line is that everything is just energy, and there's just levels and frequencies of energy, and you can choose to move up the scale or move down the scale. And when you've gone up the scale as far as you can go, and you realize it's infinite anyway, then sometimes it's fun to come down the scale again, just like on a roller coaster, and experience the ups and downs. But what you want to do now is you want to stay balanced in the middle. And when you've had these experiences, you can choose to participate in the elevation or not to. And it's not a choice you need to make once and stick to. You can choose to interact and to help and to be part of the awakening and the enlightening of humanity, and raising the awareness and the consciousness and the frequency through group meditations and all that sort of stuff. Or you can choose not to. You can just go, hey, I know that at least next year I can cater my whole life to go back to Burning Man again, and I can have that experience next year in a different way. And everything else, they can just do whatever it does. So the choice is yours, because you've had that experience. You've earned the right to participate or not. Now, most people choose to participate and to help out and give back, because you want to be in that state more and more. And I think that's part of what is really good about these events and these little training sessions and these group meditations and these little communities that are popping up, is that we've had a taste of what's possible. We've had a taste of what can be done. And it's not an idea anymore. It's not something we believe in. It's something we know, because we've felt it, we've experienced it. It's in our being now, it's in our body. And when we're not in line with that, we become really intolerant to it. And it's like, how do I don't want to feel like this. How do I be okay with where I am in accordance to what I've just experienced? And so this is where the work comes in, is in balancing yourself and going back to there. Now, meditation is a great tool. Getting the body aligned and in tune with these frequencies is another great tool. Let me just read this. How can you properly deal with negative emotions if they come up? How can you let them go? Be very interesting for me to hear hear an approach from you. How do I deal with it? Just with breathing, for example. Okay, so here's the baseline, is that you've had this experience in an environment. The environment of Burning Man, in this example, the people there, the state that they're in. And if you go to a workshop or you go on holiday, you're going to have a similar experience, if it's a good one, where the environment is going to signal you to activate certain things within you that maybe have been lying dormant. This is another reason for the Q&A. The questions will activate things in you too, and the answers will activate things in you too. And so whatever you were feeling there, you have to acknowledge that those emotions, they started inside you. They were created by you. They were triggered by the environment and the people and the experiences there. Just like a device, a drug can put you into a particular state, just like meditation can put you into a particular state. These are all tools, but ultimately, the neurochemistry in the brain has been activated, something's been unlocked, and then you start to experience this feeling, and then you start to act on the feeling. And in an environment like Burning Man, for example, it's really easy to stay in that state, because nothing is of the contrary. Everything is encouraging you into that state. But when you're in this consensus reality, there's all sorts of different things distracting you, trying to get your attention, pulling you in all these different vibrations. So the first thing um, that I recommend, which is what you're doing right now, is give yourself time weekly at least. You need to give yourself outlets where you can begin to tune back into those states. You're not necessarily going to have the big peak mystical experience every week, right? But um, you're going to be able to revisit it. You're going to be able to spend time uh, putting your attention towards it. You're going to be able to create pathways in and out of there, and not just one. So, for example, like what a lot of people do is they'll have an experience like what you just had. They've had the contrast of being back home, and then they create their whole life just to go back down that one pathway back to Burning Man each year. And if it's not, and it's never the same, obviously, it's not the same as the first experience you had, it's always different. But their whole life starts to get dedicated towards reactivating this experience in the one same way. But that's not what it's about. What you want, that's just the example. It's an example of what you can feel. It's an example of what a group of people can feel if the environment and their mind is all set up in the right way. Once you've had that experience, you come back, you start to ground it wherever you can. And so, this is why meditation is good. You need a time and a space that's not going to, you're not going to be distracted by the external world. The other thing I recommend is you put on blindfolds and you take the sensory stimulation away, so you can go inside. If you can go inside and through thought alone activating the memory of that experience and dwell there, for example, or anything that resembles that experience, then you're going to start to train the brain and body into a state where you can activate that at varying degrees, maybe not up here of what you've had, but you will be on the same corridor across the spectrum, making sense, right? It might not be so focused like a laser like it was, but it might be out here somewhere. At least you're in the vicinity of having that same baseline reality feeling. And then you start to, once you've locked that in and you sort of get trained into that, you know, it's a bit like, another way of putting it is, if you're a fitness person, you go to a training camp for a week and you train with like the Navy SEALs, and they push you past all these limits and you're like, oh my God, I didn't know I could do that. I feel so strong. I feel like I can do anything. It's the Tony Robbins, anchoring. Yes, I can do everything. I can do anything. And then you come back home and you start going to the gym again. You might not have the same peak experience and busting through personal bests all week long, every week. But what happens is it puts you on a whole different lane, whole different rail, whole different track. And you start to train up to that peak experience and try to get that peak experience to your norm. Now, what's happened is most people have this massive gap. They have this amazing experience, especially if it's induced by an environment and thousands of people all raising that energy up. And it's wonderful when you're in it if it can be sustained. But when you come out of it, you're like, okay, my goal is not to be there all the time. My goal is to train myself and recreate my life in a way, well, that will be my baseline. That will be my normal. But from here to there, what I want to do now is I want to start training myself in there, and I want to start getting into this flow, this creative mode where I'm taking what is. I'm accepting wholeheartedly where I am, who I am, what I've created up until this point, because my present is the creation from my past. Now that I've had this new information from my future, I'm going to reorganize all this stuff in the present, and that's going to set me on a new pathway into a new future. It's just like being on a ship, okay? You've been going in this direction, all of a sudden someone shows you the map. They say, this is where you could go, this is where you're actually going. And you go, holy shit, I don't want to go where I'm going. I want to go here. This is where I want to go now. And so um, it's a bit like if you're the captain of the ship or the navigator, as the ship's going along, you can get off like on the helicopter and go to land and go, hey, this is where we should go. And then you come back to the ship, and now you've got to navigate the ship towards that new destination, as an example, as a metaphor. Don't get trapped in the metaphor, by the way. And so what you're doing now is you start to anchor this state at whatever degree you can, even if it's down here, even if it's 1% of 100. I mean, we all want the 100% as our baseline, but if you can anchor 1% right across the spectrum, then you're already in the new future. You've just turned the ship 1 degree, so you're not going where you were going, at least. So this frustration, this sort of anger, this, irritation towards the old life, this is you like turning the ship, okay? And as once I've heard the saying, it's a big ship and it's a big turn, so it's going to take some time. But here's the key, all right? And if you get nothing out of this, this is the key, is that it's not about the destination. We heard this before. It's about the journey. We know that. But it's more than that. It's about becoming a good navigator and a good sailor and a good pilot of your vehicle through space and time. Because when you learn how to pilot this vehicle through space and time, you learn how to change your energy and manage it and tune into whatever potential you want. You will realize that the destination that you're trying to get back to is only a transitory destination. Even when you will be able to tune yourself, your energy into that frequency consistently. When you get there, that will become your new normal. And then life will give you another experience just like the one you've just had to show you what else is down the track. And so then you're going to have all sorts of new irritations and new frustrations and new negative energy, right, to deal with, because you're going to be going somewhere else from that platform. Because as we know, it's never ending, it's infinite. So when you know this, and you know that life is peaks and troughs, it's the roller coaster, it's up and down, it's this side of the spectrum and that side, good and bad, and your whole job is to become this navigator, this pilot of this bioenergetic system, this, this super genius spacesuit through interdimensional reality, this physical experience. When you get good at that, then that's really what your goal is. That's really what you want. Okay, it's not about getting over there, because I've heard stories of people who, got to, didn't like those environments. They got there and it freaked them out. It shook them up, and they couldn't handle it. And so it's not about the environment. The emotion, the state you're looking for is not in the environment, it's inside you. And if you're good at changing your state, and you're good at changing your energy and navigating yourself through time, space, realities, then it doesn't matter where you are, because you will know wholeheartedly, confidently, that you can navigate from this point in space, time, or time, space, to any point in time, space. And so it becomes about being a good sailor, a good pilot, a good navigator. And, how good are you at managing this? No, don't worry about any of that, because going back to the metaphor of the martial artist, when you get really good at certain things, you're not going to be interested in training in particular styles or techniques as much as you're going to be wanting to be stimulated in ways that you haven't been before, so you can respond and have new experiences and in new ways that you've never responded to before. And so this has been known to be called true movement. Okay, um, or being in the flow. And it's so, Bruce Lee would say, I don't hit, it hits all by itself. So you reach this point where you have trained and tweaked and uploaded and upgraded this system so much so that it can respond on autopilot to just about anything, and you can just sit back and chill out and enjoy the ride. And it doesn't matter how hairy it gets, you're having a good time the whole way through. And this is one thing I see most people in the spiritual scene get mixed up, is they're trying to get on cloud nine and stay there. And the thing is, imagine you're on cloud nine. Imagine you're at Burning Man for not just a week, but for a month or 2 months or 6 months or a year. You would pretty soon see little cracks in that environment too, that things aren't quite working the way they did in the beginning, or you're not responding in the way that you did in the beginning. And pretty soon you'd be looking for stimulation in another environment. And that's normal. Okay. So there was this really cheesy old film with David Carradine. It's called The Silent Flute. And it's about this guy who was a fighter, and he was going across the land. This is like pre-biblical age setting, and he's going through the terrain. He's looking for this master fighter Zetan, and his thing is, if he can be Zetan, then he will be the new master. And so he goes through all these trials and tribulations, and finally ends up at this paradise where he thinks Zetan is there. And the caretaker of the place is saying, throughout the ages, all the greatest fighters throughout history have made their way to this utopian place. And, some decide to go back into the world, and some decide to stay. And he's trying to convince the main character to take over his position as caretaker of this place. And in the end, he's like, no, I don't want to stay here. I'm going back into the world where it's not all just peaceful and white, fluffy clouds all the time. I'm going to go back into the environment where I can be tested and I can continue to grow and continue to become, better at my art, better at my skill. And so, don't be so hard on yourself feeling these emotions. These emotions are your apparatus. These are your weights. This is the next level for you. All right. This is the next thing for you to become attuned to and balance out. So don't look at it as, oh, I have to not feel this way, or I have to stay positive. It's like, yeah, okay, sometimes, you're going to be off balance, but find out what that means to you and why it's so distressing to you, and deal with that, balance that, smooth that out. And then being in the environment's not going to be a problem for you. Another way of putting it is, if you come back to your training regime after going and training with the Navy SEALs, for example, and you hit all your PBs, you come back, obviously you're not going to train the way you used to. You're going to up the weight, or you're going to try different exercises, or you're going to have more reps involved, or you're going to shake up the pattern because you've learned some new things, and you're going to integrate it into your environment. And so you probably you got this point, I'm sure, but here's the warning I will give you. This is what I found worked really well for me, is that I would use small adjustments. I would have a really good look at what was going on first, and I would feel that irritation, feel that negativity until I couldn't frickin' stand it anymore. And then I would start working on little pieces to adjust. I wouldn't go cleaving my life to pieces and, immediately running away from my life and moving house and cutting all my friends out of my life and stuff like that. But I would start to do more things of what made me feel more in tune. So I would do a lot more meditation. I'd spend a lot more time alone. I'd spend a lot more time not being stimulated from the external world and getting my internal energy, thoughts, emotions lined up. Once I had that space, and I would do that daily as many times as a day as I could, for as long as I could, without straining or pushing myself. It needed to be something that was enjoyable, because when I envisioned myself being at the destination of that new normal, it felt easy. It wasn't hard. It wasn't a chore. So I would take note of when I was pushing myself too far, and I would bring it back just a little bit, and I would maintain that new level as long as I could. It's like if you're stretching your body and you're really tight and tense and you want to end up doing a split. um, you don't just practice doing the splits all the time. You stretch the body in all these different, you stretch the whole body, and you stretch it gently here and there, because at the end of the day, when you finally get the split, you don't want to be in there for 3 seconds and have to eject out. You want to be able to just watch TV in the split, right? And so you want it to become your new normal. So let this ripple out into your life easily and effortlessly. Throw seeds out all over the place. And then once I got that, once I could do that in my living room or in my bedroom, right, and I could just sort of be there, at least for moments here and there, without anything, without needing anything, then I would start to take that emotion, that state of being, into my life. And at first you're going to lose it all the time. You're going to lose control, and you're going to slip off. You're going to get annoyed, and you're going to have to go back to the drawing board, tune it back in again, and over and over and over and over and over and over, until finally it clicks in and it locks in. And that's the process of the great work, right? But once you locked it in, once that's your new normal, you don't have to do anything about it anymore. It's there. All you need to do maybe is tweak it, upgrade it, make sure it's still running. But that's going to be your new autopilot. And so another way of putting it is, like, imagine you're a computer programmer and you've just gotten totally fed up with the operating system you've been using, or the program, or the methods of, you go, oh, there's got to be an easier way to do spreadsheets, and make sure my taxes are done on time, and to manage my bank accounts and my energy and all that sort of stuff. There's got to be a better way, because right now I feel like I'm carrying buckets to and from the well when I should just build a pipeline. So at first you still need to carry the buckets, but at the same time, you're going to be taking time out every day to build the pipeline. And once the pipeline's done, you don't have to carry buckets anymore. Once the program's written, there's no bugs in it, it works properly, it runs and runs and runs. You just hit the button, you turn it on, and you forget about it, and it runs in the background, and that new energy starts broadcasting into your life. You start to have these new experiences that match that. And what happens is you start to lucidly overlay, you start to live lucidly, and you overlay on top of the existing reality your new state of mind and being, and your new energy broadcast, and starts automatically manifesting and warping time and space. And so this is really this is the goal. This is the map of what we're doing. And these training sessions, these Q&A sessions, all of this is going to be tuning you in. This is what this is all about. Okay. And not just tuning it in Brett's way, or energetic arts way, or using the law of attraction, or doing it all through meditation. We're going to do this in every way, in any way we possibly can. And so you've got not just one or two outlets or one system that's going to work. you got thousands of systems, you got thousands of pathways in everything that you do, every breath you take, every thought you have, every emotion that you experience, every way you move. Everything is going to support you tuning into um, this new higher baseline frequency, um, of being able to masterfully move in and out of different dimensions and states of being. Make sense? Did I answer the question? Did I help? Did I give you some insight there? So just a little takeaway of something you can practically do. Obviously, you want to be able to get into a meditative state and start to lengthen your time. Think about it like running, okay, and fitness. Think about it like fitness. We're going to call it focus fitness in this example. And so remember, whatever you focus upon is what you put energy to and what starts to expand. And so what a lot of people are doing is when they're trying to manifest something really positive, and then they have contrary thoughts to that, and doubts and disbeliefs, and so their energy goes here and it gets invested here, and then all of a sudden it gets withdrawn over here, and then they're sort of not really getting anywhere because it's all equalizing into not much, or they get a little bit of manifestation, they get a lot of frustration. So with meditation as a baseline tool, observing the breath, candle focus is another great one. Really simple, basic acts. It's not about the technique so much, it's what it's doing to you. And so you could be fiddling with a Rubik's Cube, and that could be reorganizing your mind in terms of getting it to learn new patterns and algorithms to organize information, process new information, for example. You could be playing Scrabble or doing a jigsaw puzzle or drawing and painting. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter what the technique is. It's what it's doing to your mind. And so you want to get into this relaxed, calm, peaceful state. That's your baseline neutral gear in your car, for example. Once you got neutral and you can stop a thought or an emotion, then you can accelerate as fast as you like if you can stop really well. So when it comes to focus fitness, we want to get into a meditative state. We want to be able to start to lengthen that state. If we're going off on different tangents, positive or negative, future or past, bring it all back to the center and find your center, find neutral, find 0 point first. If you can do that, then you're going to be in really good position. And then once you can do that and hold that for a longer period of time, and you can repeatedly do that on command, basically. So you get trained in just like you would if you had a pet, and it knows that it goes out this time every day, so it can do its business out there somewhere. It's just like doing that in your mind with meditations, that you know that you can tune into that state predictably, even if it's only for a few minutes, even though you give yourself an hour. You're going to get in there at least once within that time frame. You can, whether it's a good meditation, bad meditation. Once you can do that and you can start to lengthen that and grow that and deepen that state, and becomes embodied in you. Another thing you want to do, and just like the running metaphor, is you want to start learning, sprints. So you want to be able to drop in and then come out, and drop in and come out, and then you do it this way and come out, and then another angle and come out, and do it this way and come out. And so then you've got all these avenues and how to get in and out, right? You can get in and out, and then you can stay there longer and longer. In and out, 1,000 different ways, staying there longer and longer and longer. And this starts to grow in and out longer and longer. And this is your energy field. Okay, and then third layer. So once you can get all that, and you don't have to train these in sequential order, you can train them in different areas in different times. You can interchange them however you want. And the third thing is, once you got that state and you can do it easily sitting in your room or on your couch or in your bedroom or in your at your altar, whatever, and you can do it several different ways with all these really basic things, then you start to take it into harder and harder environments. And you pressure test and strengthen your resolve in holding that state. Okay, just like we did, I said with the martial artists, once you get good, you try on different opponents, different skill levels, weaponry, multiple attackers, and see if you can maintain that state. And each time you hit these new levels and you get beyond the edge of your mind, just know you're going to feel those negative emotions. You're going to feel the frustration, you're going to feel the anger, the disappointment, the doubt, the insecurity, the disbelief, all that, because you're at a new level now, and that's where the work is for you. So, um, in a way, in a sort of sadistic way, you got to enjoy the suffering, because it's like, well, now that you've been stretched and you know what's on the other side, it's not about just going back there and forgetting about this reality. It's about, now that you know it's there, can you bring it back and can you ground it here? Because can you imagine, and I'm sure everyone's thought this before, that if you had that experience at Burning Man, then there's probably tens of thousands of people that have also had that experience at Burning Man. And, a lot of these huge CEOs of massive companies, I've heard rumored at least, that they go to these things once a year, and then they come back, and because they've already got their environment set up where they can not be interrupted, then they get really creative, come up with all these new ideas, these new technologies, these new products and services, and they put them out in the world. And all of a sudden, you're using this new app that's just making life really easy, and it's going in that direction, or you're driving an electric car now, or you have solar panels on your roof and your house is fully sustainable, so you don't have to pay for energy anymore. Things like that start to slowly, almost sneakily, get slipped into your reality here and there, that in a way you don't even notice. And then over time, through time, a period of months, weeks, months, years, all of a sudden you're in that new reality, and it just sort of snuck up on you. All right. And it's your new normal. And then you go through the cycle again, and you start looking for something else out in beyond the edge. So you see the pattern here. I'm not saying this is the be all and end all, but this is a very useful frame and useful approach, at least from my perspective as a student and an artist, in my experience, that I think maybe will help you too. So I think that's it for me for the moment. Unless you have anything you want me to go into deeper. I know that was a lot to process. The other thing is, ask this question of yourself: what is it that I can do? What exercises can I do? What state of being can I be in that allows me to process larger amounts of information more quickly? All right, so I'll leave you with that question, because when you get these experiences out there, you're going to get downloads. Some of these downloads are huge. They take a long time to unpack. Some ideas, like, can you imagine Elon Musk, right? He gets this packet to download. So wouldn't it be great to colonize Mars? This little soundbite. But unpacking that, oh my God, you've got to become an engineer in rocket science. You've got to be, what is it, geophysicist or whatever. You've got to know how to, what's the word I'm looking for? How you terraform. You got to know how to terraform a colony. All these questions, all these bits and bytes of information that need to be processed to be able to make that a reality. Who do I need on my team to be able to make that reality happen, all these things. So your ability to stay in the focus fitness, your ability to get in and out really quickly, your ability to maintain that state under all sorts of different stresses. And when you're doing that, by the way, do it safely. Make sure you set it up really, really well first. You got plenty of support out the other end. Think about it like a stunt man doing a stunt in a movie. They don't just throw people into danger. They really work it all out. They plan it all out. They make it as safe as humanly possible before any, and then they train all these little aspects of it before they even try the stunt. Okay, and then upgrade your ability to be able to process information and integrate things quickly. Can I repeat the question again? I want to write it down. Yeah, so it was something like, what can I do? What state can I be in? Or what actions can I take to be able to receive and process larger amounts of information more rapidly? All right, guys, thanks for turning up. I hope that was really informative and helpful. Let me know how you go. Cool. Practice those things or not, it's up to you. And we'll tune in with me next time when you can. You don't have to be religious, by the way. I mean, it's great if you're coming every week and you can, but if you can't, it's probably means that you're actually doing the work and you're practicing. And you don't want to pull yourself out of the practice to come and train if you're in the process of actually doing the work. But next week we've got life hacks, and I've got the hot seat coming up. So rather than just sort of passively sitting back, listening and learning, which is cool, you'll have the opportunity to get on the split screen, and then in real time we can start working on a particular thing like we did today. We can do it in real time, and I get a lot more feedback, and I get through a lot of things more quickly because of the feedback. And then also, obviously, we've got Q&A each week. So the other thing I would like from you, if possible, is obviously the weekly training sessions, the webinars like life hacks and the ones with topics are good because they're going to give you maps and programs and tools and techniques that maybe you're not familiar with that we can sort of go into and practice through a meditation. But the Q&A, if you can come into it with some stuff prepared that you want me to go into, that's really cool. That is really cool, because then I can respond and I can do a bit of training on my end as well. All right, so we'll leave it there. Thanks for coming in. If you found this helpful, please share the link. Please bring your friends along. And, well, you don't have to. They're going to notice that you're doing something, and they're going to ask you, what are you up to? And then you can tell them, and then they can decide whether they want to come along or not. Until then, though, I'll see you next time. Thanks for coming, and take it easy, be kind, and tender-hearted to yourself. Okay, bye for now.